Fighting between Israel and Palestine rages on, killing over 2,000. There's speculation about an imminent Israeli ground offensive into Gaza and fear over an expansion of violence in the region that could involve Lebanon and Syria. Samsung Electronics operating profits recovered to the trillion won threshold in the third quarter thanks to strong mobile phone sales and a smaller deficit in the chip division. From a robot that cooks and serves a meal to one that navigates through narrow spaces, get a glimpse of what this year's Robot World exhibition has to offer for the present and the future of robots. It's October 11th, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We continue our coverage in the Middle East, where fighting between Israel and Hamas rages on. More reports suggest that a buildup of Israeli forces signals an imminent ground operation in the Gaza Strip. The U.S. has reaffirmed full support to Israel amid concerns that the situation could cause a broader regional conflict. Bae Eun-ji has our top story.
Israel appears to be preparing for a ground invasion of Gaza, which could pose a risk to the lives of hostages being held in the area. Although the country has not officially announced ground operations, Israeli citizens were told on Monday night to prepare to stay inside a safe shelter and gather enough food, water, and other supplies to last 72 hours. The Guardian reported this was a clear sign that a ground assault in Gaza is imminent, adding that Israeli tanks and military helicopters were seen on an Israeli highway that runs parallel to the Gaza Strip. Citing Israel's chief military spokesperson, the Wall Street Journal also stated that Israel has called up 300,000 reservists, noting the number suggests preparations for a possible invasion. As Washington works to prevent a broader conflict, U.S. President Joe Biden said his country is rushing more military assistance, including ammunition and missile interceptors, to replenish Israel's Iron Dome defense system. Adding that he's going to make sure Israel doesn't run out of these critical assets, he condemned Hamas's latest attack, calling it an act of sheer evil.
We stand with Israel, and we will make sure Israel has what it needs to take care of its citizens, defend itself, and respond to this attack. There's no justification for terrorism. There's no excuse.
Biden's remarks come after the aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford arrived in the region with its accompanying guided missile cruiser and destroyers. The first U.S. plane carrying advanced weaponry has also arrived at an airbase in southern Israel, according to the Israel Defense Forces. It also comes amid growing fears that the armed group Hezbollah, based in Lebanon, could also initiate a war with Israel. The Iran-backed group has already exchanged fire with Israel after 3 of its members were killed in Israeli strikes. Hezbollah is a militant group that was formed in 1982 to fight Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon and has described Hamas's latest attack as a decisive response to Israel's continued occupation. Its involvement could lead to a serious conflict, as the group claims to have precision rockets that can hit all parts of Israel. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Over the weekend, there was a horror of attack by Hamas at a music festival in southern Israel that resulted in hundreds of civilian casualties and kidnappings. Our Choi So-young spoke to one of the survivors of this horrific incident.
In one brief moment, a music festival meant for joy turned into a nightmare in southern Israel near the Gaza border on Saturday morning. Hila, a 26-year-old part-time bartender at the festival, told Arirang News that a rocket went off overhead. She thought it was fireworks.
I was telling to one of the customers, hey, look, there is a fireworks. And he looked at the sky and told me, I don't think it's fireworks. And we see a lot of red alarm, we call it in Israel, when like it's a missiles and rockets alarms. And then the production shut out the music and scream, there's a lot of missiles and rockets, run or hide.
At first, she hid inside the bar, frozen, still in fear. One of her friends grabbed her hand to get off there.
And I turn around and see all the terrorists. People start to falling one by one, just like it doesn't related to if you're a soldier or an innocent civilian. How old are you? What is your gender? What is your religion? If you're Israeli or not? Just shooting all the people.
Some of her friends were killed in the massacre terror at the festival, and the fate of some is uncertain.
They're raping my friends. I have 3 friends that are already dead. 2 of them, we don't know what's happened to them, and 2 of them inside of Gaza. That one of the things that I do remember, it's really in my mind, that while we are running and screaming and crying, I hear them singing and laughing.
A freelance journalist based in Tel Aviv, Israel, delivers the current situation from the field in Gaza.
The authorities in Israel ended up finding 260 dead bodies just from this festival alone. I know in one of the communities where a good friend of mine lives, at least 15 people, even within her community, were murdered, dragged out of their homes and shot pretty much execution style, in her words.
She added almost 360,000 reserve troops, including volunteers, have been called up throughout the country.
And Israel doesn't want to kill anyone. We don't want to kill Palestinians. That's not what the ethos of this country is about. But Israel must defend itself, and we don't have any choice.
They said that Palestine and Hamas are completely different, and that the terrorist organization must stop. Hyung, Arirang News.
President Yoon today convened an emergency meeting to review the security and economic impact of the Israel-Hamas conflict. At the Yongsan presidential office, Yoon was joined by his top aides and cabinet ministers in foreign affairs, defense, intelligence, and trade. The previous day, the president had called on the government to monitor the situation thoroughly and prepare measures to ensure the safety of Korean nationals in the region, as well as cushion the blow of any financial impact if the war stretches on and becomes an international conflict. Another powerful earthquake struck western Afghanistan on Wednesday morning, just days after devastating quakes that left thousands dead. The 6.3 magnitude earthquake struck about 28 kilometers north of the city of Herat and was followed by 2 more quakes. Reportedly, at least 80 people have been injured, while a main highway is blocked due to a landslide. According to AP, the landslide destroyed all 700 homes in Chahak village. Although no deaths have been reported yet, following the deadly earthquakes in Herat province on Saturday, over 10,000 families have been reportedly affected. Samsung Electronics' estimated operating profit for the third quarter has topped 2 trillion Korean won. It was driven by a robust performance in the mobile phone and display sectors. Also, the semiconductor division made significant strides in reducing its deficit during the same period. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young with more.
Samsung Electronics is forecasting an improvement in its performance for the third quarter of this year. The South Korean tech giant reported on Wednesday an estimated third quarter operating profit of 2.4 trillion Korean won, or around $1.8 billion, down almost 78% from the same period last year. But this is a distinct improvement from the previous quarters of 2023, with the operating profit skyrocketing roughly threefold compared to the second quarter. In fact, it's an earnings surprise far exceeding market expectations of around 1.9 trillion won. Estimated sales for the third quarter plunged more than 12% year-on-year, but rose over 11% from the previous quarter to 67 trillion won, or around $50 billion. Operating profits for both the first and second quarters plunged by more than 95% year-on-year. This came as the company's semiconductor sector saw consecutive deficits of around 4 trillion won during the period. The company did not disclose the details of its key business sectors, but analysts expect the losses at its semiconductor unit were offset by strong performances by its mobile phone and display divisions, thanks to the release of its Galaxy Z Flip 5 and Fold 5 smartphones. Experts expect that the deficit at the semiconductor unit decreased in the third quarter due to production cuts.
It takes about 6 months to see the effects of Samsung Electronics chip production cuts initiated in April. Due to the cuts, prices for memory chips, the DRAM and NAND flash, are no longer decreasing. As a result, Samsung's losses in its semiconductor unit for the third quarter are likely to be reduced.
He added that IT firms, data centers, and electronics manufacturers have nearly depleted their inventories, so there is the expectation they will start ordering more in the fourth quarter, which will lead to a growth in semiconductor sales, which could even see the division get out of the red. 신하영, Arirang News.
Findings for the month of August show Korea's current account remaining in positive territory for the fourth straight month as imports fell greater than exports yet again. Pundits believe prospects for the final quarter are brighter. Park Go-nu has the latest findings and forecasts.
South Korea's current account was in the black in August for the fourth straight month. Preliminary data by the Bank of Korea released on Wednesday shows a current account surplus of $4.81 billion in August, as imports dropped deeper than exports. The cumulative surplus from January to August was around $10.9 billion. Even though the figure was only about half compared to the same period last year, an official from the central bank said South Korea will be able to reach its target of $24.5 billion by the end of 2023.
If we see an average of $4 billion of surplus each month from September to December, we will be able to reach the target for this year. We tentatively expect the surplus to be higher in September compared to August.
He supported this outlook by citing expected decreases in overseas travel and better trade conditions in September, and added the situation will get better in the last quarter. By category, the goods balance saw a surplus for the fifth consecutive month, exceeding $5 billion, the highest since March last year. Exports in August were down 8.3% on year, continuing a trend that began 12 months ago. Although automobile exports increased over 28% on month, decreases in petroleum products and semiconductors led to a drop in the overall export volume. In terms of region, outbound shipments to the Middle East, the EU, and the United States rose on year, but dropped in a number of regions, including China. Imports decreased about 22% compared to last year, with an even greater drop for both volume and ratio as imports of raw materials, capital goods, and consumer goods all fell. The service balance was in the red again in August, with a $1.6 billion deficit, mainly due to a higher travel account deficit than last year after COVID-19 measures were eased. In August, the financial account balance exceeded $5.7 billion as Korean investment in overseas markets increased by over $3.4 billion. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
South Korea saw a trade balance deficit of $5.3 billion for the first 10 days of October. Korea Customs Service says the nation's export volume during the period was at $11.6 billion. This is a drop of 1.7% year-on-year, mainly due to continuous drops in the exports of semiconductors. But when considering that there was 1 half-day less this year compared to last year, the outbound shipment volume increased a little over 9%. For imports, the total volume jumped 8.4% to almost $17 billion. Meanwhile, the nation's leading think tank says the Korean economy is showing slow but tangible resilience in the face of broader market challenges. Yoon explains.
As the U.S. continues its monetary tightening policies and the pressures of global inflation remain driven by rising oil prices, the strain on the South Korean economy persists. But the contraction in the country's exports is lessening, with the manufacturing industry seeing an accelerating trend in production and expectations of a moderation in the overall economic sluggishness. In August, production grew by 1.5%, which reversed the previous month's decline of a negative 1.5%. Growth was seen in industrial production as demand heightened for high-performance semiconductors, especially those used in AI servers, as well as in services production, including financial and insurance services. Financial transactions were also up as more people traveled overseas. And a rise in foreign tourists coming to Korea also marked a narrower decline in accommodation and food services. Consumer goods consumption remains slow, mainly due to an ongoing reduction in real income on the back of high prices and interest rates. In August, retail sales showed a further decline from a negative 1.7% the previous year to a negative 4.8%. This includes poor growth in terms of imported passenger cars as well as food and beverages. Meanwhile, the local housing market is seeing a recovery in demand, especially in the capital metropolitan area. But a significant reduction in housing permits and new construction projects remains, leaving concerns over the supply of housing in the future. The OECD recently revised the global economic outlook for 2023 to 3%, but expects 2.7% by 2024, below the average for the period between 2011 and 2019, which was at 3.5%. 이은진, Arirang News.
China will host its third Belt and Road Forum next week in Beijing. The country's foreign ministry said Wednesday that the conference will take place on October 17th and 18th. The conference marks the 10th anniversary of the launch of China's Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to connect China, Central Asia, Africa, and Europe via land and maritime networks to stimulate economic growth. Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to attend and meet with Xi for talks. Putin attended the two previous forums in 2017 and 2019. Representatives from 130 countries, including from Latin America and Africa, are also anticipated to attend the conference. The nation's South Korea's largest robot exhibition, being held in the city of Kuyang, offers a chance to get a glimpse of the latest advancements in robotics. As our Moon Hae-ryun reports, it presents possible solutions to labor shortages and also a future where robots coexist with humans.
Robots that can fry food, robots that can walk on all fours, robots that can piece things together. These are just some of the robots on display at the country's largest robot convention this year. Starting on Tuesday and running until Saturday, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy is hosting the biggest robot world yet.
Here at Robot World 2023, over 240 companies and organizations are showcasing a future where robots and humans can walk side by side.
This is a robot that serves, but unlike most serving robots that follow a given path, this one can navigate through narrow spaces. It can also avoid small objects on the floor, but its biggest development is the way it responds to human gestures. Raising a hand will register in its system through a camera sensor, prompting it to wheel over. This South Korean company also developed the first cleaning robot in the world that, instead of wheels, has a mop that swivels to move. This year, it's been upgraded so that it can pass over raised door sills into different rooms. But robots are now advancing beyond assisting humans in their daily lives. Now we're a step closer to coexisting with robots and having them work with each other. The Korea Institute of Science and Technology has developed a sequence of coordinated robots to create the ultimate cafe experience. Robots take your order, make the coffee, serve it to your table, and also serenade you with music.
This demonstration shows how different robots will be able to coexist with us in the future.
And it's not just in our everyday routine where robots come in handy. In industrial production, they're key workers. Labor shortages in the shipbuilding industry are a serious issue all around the world. Not only are there not enough people, but as jobs such as welding require special training, it's difficult to find people who have enough experience to produce the quality of work needed. With these robots, however, anyone can weld.
This robot just needs a starting point of welding, and then it will do the job for you.
With the expansion of robots in a wide variety of fields from service to manufacturing, it's fast becoming a key future industry for the country. The government will be announcing its fourth basic plan for intelligent robots within the year in order to foster the robotics industry further. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Lego plastic bricks could be small, but they often spark big imaginative creations for many, including children and adults alike. And there happens to be an artist who's using them to reimagine traditional Korean culture. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin has this story.
The soulful sound of the Korean traditional song pansori harmonizes with the graceful moves of chuningmu, a Korean traditional dance. What makes this performance even more captivating is a Lego ensemble seemingly dancing and playing music in the background. It's all part of Lego artist Sojinho or Colin Jin's first solo exhibition, Colin Jin's Historical Lego, where plastic blocks breathe life into tradition.
Korean culture is enjoying global popularity, but in reality, everything popular today is quite modern. It made me wonder if we might be losing touch with our history. I began delving into our cultural heritage from the past and got the idea of using Lego blocks to connect the past with the present.
The exhibition showcases 100 Lego artworks depicting Korean cultural heritage. The highlight is the Jongmyo Jereak, a royal ancestral ritual that was carried out between the 14th and 19th centuries during the Joseon dynasty. A UNESCO cultural heritage, this Confucian ceremony features song, dance, and music with dozens of performers.
The playful combination of the traditional orchestra, so even the traditional Korean instruments are in there, several of them. So I think it's quite exciting.
You can also enjoy Lego versions of the Korean folk dance Seungmu, a dragon-faced roof tile from the ancient Silla kingdom, and the Korean mask Tal. It took So 18 months and over 10,000 blocks to finish his creations, and he didn't rely on any customized Lego blocks or manuals. The exhibition's goal: to entertain and educate visitors.
Making Korean culture and the arts easily enjoyable for everyone is a wonderful endeavor. We're delighted to be a part of the opening ceremony and look forward to promoting our cultural heritage to a wider audience.
A reinterpretation of traditional Korean beauty through the lens of one of the modern era's most iconic toys, Colin Jin's Historical Lego is on show at the Moriham exhibition in Central Seoul for 2 weeks. 송유진, Arirang News.
Cool autumn weather is set to continue throughout the week. Many regions across South Korea will be waking up to a chilly morning. A few locations such as Andong and Daegwallyeong will be falling into single figures, but sunshine throughout the daytime will quickly allow temperatures to warm up by nearly 10 degrees Celsius or more. For Seoul, daytime highs will be climbing back to 23 degrees Celsius. Drastic fluctuation in daily temperatures can make our bodies more vulnerable to viruses, so please take extra care of your health. High waves are in store for the East Coast until tomorrow. It is highly recommended to refrain from fishing or boating. And for Gangwon-do province and other mountainous regions, readings will be plummeting overnight. This may cause frost and even ice. Please do look out for potential damage of agricultural crops. And sunny skies will dominate nationwide. Seoul and Gwangju will be starting off at 13 degrees. As for the daily high, Seoul and Daejeon will be reaching 23. Chuncheon will be topping out at 22 degrees. Moderate conditions are in the forecast for the remainder of the week. Central regions, including Seoul, may see brief showers on Saturday. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arirang TV is conducting a quality and satisfaction evaluation to enhance the broadcast service for viewers worldwide. Please visit our website www.arirang.com to provide your honest opinions. Participants will be entered into a draw for a chance to win prizes. 2023 Overseas TV Viewer Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
Loved and watched around the world. We want to make more animations to reach more children. Traveling time and space. Developing adventure and curiosity. Infinite creativity and hope. We want our children to grow up to be happy. Animation, watched by children all around the world. So that joy can be felt when our animation is watched. This is the reason we make animation and share with the world. K-Animation, befriending children all over the world.
Welcome. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Hello everyone, it's Wednesday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. October 10th was a big day in North Korea as it marked the 78th founding anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party. Some observers forecast that Pyongyang would attempt to launch a military reconnaissance satellite around this time, but this has yet to take place. Instead, the regime released words defending the proposed launch, saying it was an indispensable strategic option to counter the U.S. Meanwhile, the war between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas is not only shaking the geopolitics of that region, but also raising concerns on the Korean peninsula as well. Hamas terrorists have already been spotted with North Korean F-7 rocket launchers, and worries over the possibility of the North transferring weapons to the regime or even mounting possible surprise attacks against South Korea are deepening. For more on this, we have invited Dr. Ko Myung-hyun, a senior fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Go, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And we also welcome Professor Brian Myers from Dongsa University. Professor Myers, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Professor Myers, first question to you. Like I said before, October 10th was a big day for North Korea. And despite some expectations, North Korea did not launch its military satellite. When could the date be?
Well, you know, the world is maybe a bit too eager to link North Korea's every launch or every display of military might to some sort of event on the political calendar. I think this is because the North Koreans celebrate so many anniversaries all year long that every launch can plausibly be linked to some special day or another. Now, some people suggest that Chairman Kim has decided to postpone the launch of the satellite until Russian experts have had a chance to take a look at things because, of course, Vladimir Putin did say in Vladivostok that he would be willing to help North Korea on this front. Now, I think, considering the fact that the North Korean media have already mentioned the possibility of an October launch, and they referenced the satellite just yesterday as something indispensable to North Korea's security. That makes me think a launch is likely to happen this month.
All right, well, it might happen this month, but we'll have to see when the timing will be for North Korea. Now, Dr. Go, what the word is focused on, of course, is whether or not Russia transferred satellite technology to North Korea. And watchers say that Russia would have provided support for a satellite rather than a projectile. What is your view on this?
Well, that's actually my expectation as well. The reason is because on the surface, Russia is in fact bound by international agreements not to transfer ballistic missile technology, which includes space vehicles. And then the reason is because Russia is a signatory to the international multilateral export control regime called the Missile Technology Control Regime. And thus, therefore, Russia, even though it's not binding, Russia is politically bound to not to transfer this kind of technologies to countries like North Korea, especially, which has multiple United Nations Security Council resolutions against the country because of its proliferation activities. But having said that, transferring satellite technology to North Korea, first of all, it's not, even though it's actually under the purview of the MTCR or Missile Technology Control Regime, it's less of a controversial, I mean, it's therefore controversial, but less sensitive than, say, transferring ballistic missile technology. And second, Russia could pretend that it's transferring satellite technology to North Korea as part of a civil space cooperation between the two countries. So I think Russia, if they are under a strong demand from North Korea to transfer some sort of sensitive technology to the country because of North Korea's support of Russia through ammunition assistance and so forth in its ongoing war in Ukraine, then Russia might think that transferring satellite technology is the worst of two bad options, and also very sensitive to the, in the view of the, at least from their own point of view. But still, transferring satellite technology to North Korea is going to be a game changer in the Korean Peninsula because we don't know exactly how North Korea is going to use satellite technology down the road. So therefore, it increases level of threats against South Korea and other countries in the region. So we expect that Russia might transfer satellite technology, but at the same time, we should be prepared for that, and then ensure that Russia pays the price for its actions.
All right, I see. Now, Professor Myers, meanwhile, it seems that arms transfer has already begun between North Korea and Russia because CBS News report pointed out that North Korea has started sending artillery to Russia following the Kim-Putin summit. Of course, it added it cannot be sure whether the transfer is part of a new long-term supply chain or a more limited consignment. But what's your view on this?
Well, to my knowledge, North Korea has never successfully manufactured anything at high volume and high quality on a consistent basis. And I think it's going to face great logistic challenges just in getting these supplies across the Yalu River on a consistent basis. And Russia knows this. So I doubt that Putin would have entered into any sort of long-term agreement, even if the North Koreans said they could handle it. Now, presuming that artillery and munitions really are being transported, which isn't certain, I think it's more likely to be a case of limited consignment of the North Koreans, in other words, shipping inventory that they've piled up over the years.
Right, so it's more likely to have been the limited consignment, all right. Now, Dr. Go, if the world does find out that Russia had given any kind of support to North Korea through the satellite launch that might soon take place, or if it is proven that weapons were delivered to Russia, what kind of countermeasures or sanctions do you expect the U.S. to come up with?
So there are a number of options for the international community to punish Russia for its transgressions. But then at the same time, those options are limited. And the reason is because Russia happens to be the permanent member of the Security Council, which will be able to pass resolutions to impose multilateral punishments or sanctions against a country that violates international norms. So, in fact, had this been any other country that's not a permanent member of the UN Security Council resolution, a country that transfers sensitive technology such as satellite technology, or even more, ballistic missile technology to North Korea, will be facing steep sanctions from the international community. But then Russia being a permanent member of the Security Council, that prospect is, in fact, not likely. So what's more likely is that the international community, headed by the United States in particular, is going to use two different types of sanctions. One is a diplomatic sanction, so it's not really an economic sanction, but then it's going to affect Russia's standing as a major power. Even though Russia has nuclear power and nuclear weapons and other powerful leverages, such as being a major oil producer, which gives them leverage in the energy market, Russia craves respect in the international community, and it really, I think, prizes its status as a permanent member of the Security Council and have any other kind of leverages in the international community and the other types of influence. So what the international community can do in case of a Russian transgression is to name Russia and shame its behavior, and it's going to limit Russia's room for maneuver, room for influence down the road. And I think even though it's an intangible punishment, I think Russia is going to feel the pain from that. The second option is more direct, and that option is clearly an economic sanctions. But in this case, because the multilateral sanctions in the form of the UN sanctions, it's not going to be possible. What the international community can do is count with the influence of the major powers such as in the West, such as the United States and the European Union, South Korea, obviously, Japan, to use autonomous sanctions or unilateral sanctions against Russian entities. So I think in this case, what these countries can do is apply sanctions against Russian manufacturer of satellites that could be used to could be one of the web product or like a system that could be transferred to North Korea. We could sanction Russian individuals, especially government officials. A lot of them have already been sanctioned because of their involvement in the war in Ukraine. But then there could be others that haven't been sanctioned yet. And there could be imposed travel ban against these officials and their dependents. So I think on the asset freezes if these individual entities keep assets outside Russia. So there are a lot of options, but then at the same time, it doesn't really have an immediate impact. I think it's going to take time for the impact to have these measures to have an impact and Russian behavior. But nonetheless, we have those options on the table.
All right, I see. So the international community could come up with diplomatic sanction, naming and shaming Russia, and of course, economic sanction to go against Russia. All right. Well, Professor Myers, staying on the possibility of a weapons transfer, as the Israeli government declared an all-out war against Hamas militants, experts emphasize the need to monitor North Korea supplying weapons to Hamas, saying there have been cases of this happening in the past. And we have already seen pictures of Hamas carrying F-7 rocket launcher as well. Were they really from the north? And what were the past cases of weapon transfer, if there were any?
Well, you know, that North Korean frag rocket has a very distinctive red stripe around the middle, and it does look an awful lot like that. You know, for years now, North Korea has been supplying weapons and munitions to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard and to Syria, or to arms traders based in either of those countries. And for quite some time now, some of those weapons have been ending up in Palestinian hands, with Hamas, for example, in Gaza, or with Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Hamas, of course, this isn't high-tech weaponry, but as American forces learned in Iraq, the low-tech weapons can be very effective in the sort of combat situations that the Israeli troops are going to have to contend with. Now, of course, it makes good sense to monitor what kind of weapons North Korea is supplying to the region, but it's going to be difficult to establish whether North Korea is directly supplying Hamas, when these weapons likely came through intermediaries some time ago. And let's remember, Hamas is using weapons from all kinds of different countries, including the United States. So that makes everything a lot more difficult to clarify.
All right, I see. Well, Dr. Go, as our Professor Brian Myers already pointed out, it could be difficult to find out if North Korea actually directly sends weapons. But is there any chance that North Korea right now might extend arms deals with not just Russia, but also countries in the Middle East region?
So in fact, there's already a major country in the Middle East that probably trades with Russia, North Korea in weapons, and that's Iran. We know that the Iranians and the North Koreans exchange technologies, especially when it comes to weapons of mass destruction. We know there's signs of clear evidence that the Iranian missile designs and sometimes North Korean missile designs are interchangeable, and they probably share rocket engine designs, and that probably extends to low level of weapon systems, many other conventional weapons, even small weapons such as rifles and machine guns, and then anti-tank weapons could be shared between these two countries. So in that sense, there's already a major channel of weapons trade between North Korea and the Middle East, and that's Iran. And we know that Iran is a major supporter of terrorist groups in the Middle East, and that applies to Hamas and Hezbollah in Lebanon. But then I think there could be another channel that could be opened up for North Korea, and that's Syria. Syria has always been, long been an ally of North Korea in the region, and it's probable that Syria, if we don't know exactly, but but we are not exactly sure, but it's probable that the Syria also been receiving weapons from North Korea. But then I think what Syrians would like to have now is more sophisticated weapon systems from North Korea, such as long-range or medium-range ballistic missiles and anti-air defense systems. So the most cutting-edge ones clearly come from Russia, but even China. But in North Korea is a willing seller of these systems. So Syria could be another candidate country that is already a customer of North Korean weapons, but then they could buy more. And we also know that Syria is an ally of Hezbollah and by extension Hamas in the Gaza district. So yes, in that sense, I think North Korea wouldn't be opening up new markets in the Middle East, but it could be strengthening its already existing clients, sales relationship with these Middle Eastern countries.
All right, I see. We might have to look at Syria for this. Now, Professor Myers, I'd like to also focus on the impact on Korean Peninsula by this war. If North Korea secures enough nuclear weapons, experts pointed out that Pyongyang might carry out surprise attacks similar to Hamas militants on Israel. How do you see this?
Well, certainly North Korea is militarily capable of conducting surprise attacks and on a much larger scale than Hamas, but it's an ultra-nationalist state. So although it has killed South Korean civilians in the past in 2010 and 2008 and in 1987 in a terrorist incident, I don't think North Korea has much interest now in launching a surprise attack when you consider that a substantial part of the South Korean public and much of the political elite is already quite sympathetic to North Korea, as we saw 5 years ago. My point is that North Korea has pretty good prospects of achieving quite a lot peacefully or quasi-peacefully. So the situation has changed from, say, the late 1960s and the early 1970s, when North Korea did conduct incursions into South Korean territory. These days, North Korea is intent on being seen around the world as a country with a legitimate right to a nuclear deterrent. And I think that attitude precludes the sort of military adventurism that his father, the Kim Jong-un's father, and his grandfather went in for.
All right, I see. It's quite interesting to hear that North Korea might not be interested in doing such surprise attacks. But Dr. Go, it is, in my opinion, quite important to know if we can defend such attacks. And so, how would South Korea be able to respond to those attacks if any of them happens?
Well, it's something that the South Korean military has been preparing for decades. We have had incursions by North Korean special commanders in the 60s and 70s, and then in a much smaller scale throughout the 80s, and most recently we know, by inference that through the landmine incident, that the North Korean commanders had probably infiltrated the zone in the demilitarized zone. So in that sense, there's been a constant, sometimes intermittent, but constant incursion on North Korean commanders, like the one we have seen in the Gaza district recently. But also, we've been experiencing North Korea's missile provocations. And then earlier this year, we had a drone incursion from North Korea. So all these examples of North Korean incursions and provocations indicate that North Koreans haven't abandoned their ambition to surprise us. Only reason why North Korea hasn't been able to do so is because South Korea has been strengthening its defense as well as surveillance mechanisms, using the latest and cutting-edge technologies of surveillance and then intelligence and reconnaissance. So I think that has precluded the prospect of a North Korean surprise attack, but not because the North Koreans lacked intent. But I think what's going on in Israel right now, and then the recent attack by Hamas, shows that just as South Korea is studying that scenario, so are the North Koreans. So I think what South Koreans will do is to, first of all, raise the level of detection, essentially try to detect North Korean incursions before that takes place. So that means more surveillance of North Korean territory and airspace by the South Korean military, as well as the United States. And also, in case there's the incursion by North Korea, despite all these efforts, is that South Korea has to threaten North Korea that it's going to retaliate 3 times or 10 times more for whatever amount of attack that North Korea succeeds in mounting against the South. So this is the idea about deterrence by punishment. And this is exactly what's going on in Gaza right now with the imminent ground invasion by the Israeli Defense Forces. So by clearly signaling to North Korea that if North Korea miscalculates, then it's going to be punished severely. We are hoping that North Korea doesn't make that mistake.
All right, I see. Now, shifting gears a little bit here to issues in South Korea. Now, Professor Myers, the Unification Ministry urged North Korea to immediately send South Korean nationals back home. First of all, what are the details that we know about these people detained in Pyongyang?
Well, these are apparently, first of all, 3 South Korean missionaries detained in 2013 and 2014, which was, of course, a time of quite high tension there in the first years of the Park Geun-hye administration. But the thornier problem is that of another 3 former North Korean defectors who had obtained South Korean citizenship before going back and being detained in 2016. I'm afraid it's going to be very difficult to get those former North Korean defectors back because North Korea simply does not recognize their having acquired South Korean citizenship. But the Unification Ministry's focus, it seems, is on getting back the person who has been detained the longest, namely Kim Jong-uk, the South Korean-born missionary who was arrested in Pyongyang 10 years ago. Now, of course, North Korea reacts with great mistrust, even when sympathetic South Koreans try to defect there for ideological reasons. So it's hardly surprising that a missionary caught in Pyongyang would end up in prison.
All right, I see. Now, based on what our Professor Myers told us, it seems they have been detained for around 7 to 10 years. Dr. Go, what can we say about the timing of the South Korean government's call to return people detained there?
So I think it's little to do with the recent developments in the Korean Peninsula. It has more to do with the new North Korea policy of the Yoon administration. One of the important changes that the current Yoon administration wanted to bring to its inter-Korean policy was to put more prominence to the North Korean human rights situation. We know that the previous administration of President Moon Jae-in put the priority on engagement rather than discussing North Korea's illicit behavior, such as human rights violations, as well as the development of nuclear weapons. We know the Yoon administration came into office promising not to do that they're going to address this pressing issue of a human rights violation that's taking place in the country. And so this is a long-term policy and very consistent policy action on the part of the Yoon administration. So it's not really has little to do with the timing. It's more about with the Yoon administration putting in place the policy promises that he had made at the beginning when he assumed office last year. So we know that the Ministry of Unification is undergoing changes. It's being restructured to focus more on the human rights issues, and I think we are seeing results of those changes now. And then what we are going to see for the foreseeable future is that the Ministry of Unification is going to highlight the issue of a human rights violation in the country rather than putting priority on engagement.
All right, so it's more about the policy of current administration. Now, Professor Myers, we are running out of time, but I'd like to ask you this last question. So South Korea is not only asking for the return of the detainees, but has been also pressuring North Korea regarding its human rights violations, as our Dr. Go pointed out. How does North Korea consider such move, and what kind of reaction do you expect from the North?
Well, North Korea thinks the human rights issue is just an excuse for its enemies to meddle in the affairs of North Korea. And this is really not just North Korea's position, but also that of China, Russia, and quite a lot of other states in the world. They believe that state sovereignty comes before human rights issues, and they always say that their critics should get their own houses in order before presuming to lecture others. Now, unfortunately, I don't think this sort of pressure right now is going to accomplish much, not least because Chairman Kim does not want to hand President Yoon a big victory, especially not with an election coming up next year. And I think if South Korea really wants to get these people out, a kind of West German approach might be more effective, by which I mean behind the scenes negotiations, perhaps conducted through a third party. Because if you lecture Kim Jong-un in public, you're putting him in a very difficult position.
All right, so behind the scenes negotiation could be more effective. All right, Professor Myers, thank you for your insight. Now, unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Dr. Go and Professor Myers, as usual, for your insights and time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.